What would you do if one day you realized the $1,000,000 home you spent your whole life building was actually just a cold grave where your happiness was buried? Why would a father, a man who once ruled with an iron fist and saw his own son as an investment project that needed to yield returns, collapse completely today over a cup of tea that had gone cold? 3 chairs, but only 2 people sitting. 1,000 lectures, but in return, only deadly silence. Is late regret enough to buy back lost years? Or will the echoes of past mistakes forever slam the door on his only son's return? Hit that like button and subscribe right below to join us. The answer in today's story will make you take a hard look at your own family. That afternoon, the sunset cast a blood-red glow through the dusty window pane, spilling long, patchy streaks across the old oak table. The air inside the old house where James grew up seemed to thicken. It didn't move. It stagnated heavy, as if time itself had been trapped by a curse within these 4 cold walls. If you looked closely at that wooden table, you'd see a web of scratches. They weren't just scratches on wood. They were the scars of time. They were the remnants of family meals that once held laughter, but were replaced by endless arguments, angry fists slamming down, and finally, long, stretching absences. James's parents sat there. 2 people at opposite ends of the long table, facing each other, but looking at no one. The physical distance was only a few meters of wood, but in their souls they were worlds apart. In that suffocating silence, the past, a monster they thought was sleeping, began to wake up. It didn't return with a massive storm or an earth-shattering event. No. True pain often comes from the smallest, most ordinary things, yet they deal the most damage. It was the sight of a cup of tea on the table. Poured long ago, the steam vanished now, sitting cold and neglected, untouched by anyone. The chill of that tea seemed to seep right into the mother's heart. She sat there staring into the void, but in her mind, the image of Diep appeared. She remembered that girl, not with the disdain or scrutiny she once forced herself to feel. Today, in this fading light, she remembered Diep's quiet smile, a gentle, resigned smile. She remembered how Diep tried to connect with the family, how she gently placed the fruit plate down, how she bowed without daring to look up, afraid of her husband's stern gaze. Diep had tried to step into their world without imposing or demanding a single thing. That very gentleness, remembering it now, made her feel a sharp sting of pain. And the father, he sat motionless, like a stone statue. But inside that hard shell, a tsunami was raging. He didn't remember smiles. He remembered his own voice. That harsh, steely voice he once took pride in as the authority of the household. He recalled the words he had stabbed into his son's heart like knives. I did everything for your own good. What do you know? Step out of this house and don't expect to come back. I'm doing this for his own good. He had repeated that mantra for years like a shield to hide his tyranny. But now, in this empty house, with no sign of his son, that phrase rang so hollow. It sounded like the cheap excuse of a failure. My friend, sometimes life punishes us in very cruel ways. Past mistakes don't come back to find us with screams or blame. If James came back and screamed in their faces, they might feel better. But no. Mistakes return in the form of echoes, It was the echo of the wooden door slamming shut too hard on that fateful day, the day James left. That slam still buzzed in the father's head every night. It was the echo of phone calls ringing in the dark, with no one answering, or worse, the hopeless long beep from the other end. It was the echo of silence during meals. Before there were three. Now, just two aging shadows. When the mother swept the yard, the rustle of the broom on dry leaves reminded her of the days James used to run and play there. When she set the table, the clinking of bowls and chopsticks sounded so lonely it was heartbreaking. Those echoes became clearer, more agonizing every day. They were like needles pricking their pride daily. When did flesh and blood love to form into suffocating control? When did a father's pride, a family's reputation, speak louder than the beating of a heart? While the old house sank into the shadow of regret far away, a different picture was being painted. James and Diep. They didn't live in the lap of luxury. There were no lavish parties, no designer clothes. They were building a simple life woven together by the smallest of gestures. Just imagine, inside a tiny rented room, James and Diep sharing dry crusts of bread at the end of the month. Together, they lit the fire on cold days, the warmth from the glowing charcoal stove illuminating two faces that were smudged with soot but beaming with joy. They laughed about their own exhaustion after a hard day's work. Their laughter was crystal clear. No calculations, no pressure. That life was certainly not perfect. It was full of worries about food and rent, but it was real. And that authenticity, though James and Diep didn't know, it was the harshest, most ironic contrast to the lives of those left behind. James's parents had everything money status, a massive house. But they lacked what James and Diep had in abundance, warmth and understanding, because the past is a patient predator. It doesn't just haunt those who leave to find freedom. It chases down and pounces on those who stay. That night, the suppression reached its breaking point. The father, unable to bear the silence of the room any longer, stood up. He walked over to the wooden cabinet, trembling, as he opened an old drawer, a place he hadn't dared to touch for years. Inside, lying under the dust of time, was a yellowed photograph. It was a picture of James as a toddler. In the photo, little James with bright shining eyes was gripping his father's index finger tight. That grip held absolute trust. That grip said, "Dad, you are my whole world." The moment he saw that photo, the weight of decades crashed down on the shoulders of this proud man. He staggered, having to grab the edge of the table to steady himself. For the first time in all these years, he admitted a painful truth to himself. He was wrong. He understood that time is not a toy soldier for him to command. Love is not merchandise for him to force or bargain for. Love can only be nurtured with gentleness, or it will be lost forever to brutality. Amidst the scattered memories and late regrets, a question sparked in his mind, burning and aching. Is it too late to turn back? The echoes of the past had awakened the human part inside him, the part he thought he had buried under the shell of the chairman, the strict father. And that human part, though trembling with fear, began to call them back to the essence of family. The distance between him and his son was no longer measured in miles, borders, or geography. It was measured by the days that passed in silence. It was measured by the nights he lay awake staring at the ceiling, asking himself, "What have I done? I won every argument, but I lost my only son." James's absence had become a silent routine, as steady as the ticking of the pendulum clock in the living room. But beneath that fake peace, everything was cracking bit by bit. The mother was the first to feel the crack. Every morning, out of an unconscious habit, etched deep in her brain, she would still take out 3 cups and place them on the dining table. One for him, one for her, and one for James. Then she would freeze. She would look at the 3rd empty cup, and silently, she would put it away. That repetitive action cut another gash into her heart every single day. She began to doubt. Was the life James chose with Diep truly the mistake she labeled it to be? Or was it simply different from what she imagined she once dreamed her son would marry, a high-class lady living in silk and velvet? But if velvet suffocated her son, while poverty with Diep made him smile, then who was actually right? That doubt was sown in her heart, like a restless seed sprouting into regret. And the father, at the company, he was still the fire-breathing boss, decisive and respected. But when the villa doors closed behind him, he returned to being a lonely old man facing himself. He remembered the times James looked at him with utter disappointment. That look haunted him more than any shouting match. He realized he never truly saw James as a human being, as an independent individual. He saw his son as a project, an investment project that he forced to yield a profit to succeed on his terms. And that project had gone bankrupt, dragging his family's happiness down into the abyss. The climax of the story arrived on a gray morning, with rain tapping steadily against the glass. The house seemed larger, emptier than usual. The mother, while tidying up her vanity drawer, found another photograph. In it, James was laughing a smile she hadn't seen in so long. She looked at that smile, and something inside her shattered. She felt a bitter lump in her throat. And for the first time after years of forcing herself to be the cold, composed madam, she let go. She broke down. She cried like a child crying for the lost years, crying for her own stupidity. The father stood at the bedroom door, silently watching the scene. His wife sobbing was the final hammer blow that smashed the wall of his pride. He stepped forward, saying nothing, and simply placed a hand on his wife's shoulder. That night, a phone call was made, not to James. She wasn't brave enough for that yet. She called an old friend, someone who had watched James grow up. Just hearing that friend mention her son's name made her voice tremble violently. In that very moment, she understood pride hadn't protected this family. Pride had torn it to shreds. That night, the old couple sat facing each other. There were no more reproaches, no more arrogant egos, only exhaustion and the raw truth. They understood that the distance separating them from their children would never close on its own. James would not return if they didn't speak first. Diep would never dare to step across that threshold without a welcome. They had to walk toward it, step by step. With the humility of parents who realized they were wrong, they began to accept an idea that sounds simple, but is incredibly difficult to practice for those used to giving orders. Turning back doesn't mean losing your authority. turning back means regaining your love, today's story pauses at that moment of awakening. We don't know yet if James will pick up the phone. We don't know if Diep will forgive them. But at least in that cold house, the flame of family connection has begun to kindle from the ashes of their ego. My dear friends, time waits for no one. Don't wait until all you have left are yellowed photographs and cold cups of tea to realize the value of the people around you. Don't look at your children as the projects of your life. Look at them as human beings who need to be loved and respected. If you are facing conflicts within your family, or if you are a parent unknowingly imposing your will on your children, please remember this story. Sometimes, lowering your head isn't a sign of weakness. You lower your head to see more clearly what you had dropped along the way. Thank you for listening. Please like and share this story if you see a shadow of yourself or your family in it. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so we can write the next chapters of James and Diep's lives together. And now, pick up the phone and call your loved ones before it's too late. Good night, everyone.